My vampire alien girlfriend took me home and showed me a secret no human was meant to see. Starfall encounter Elijah Mercer leaned against the curved viewport of orbital station Artemis, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. The blue-green planet looked so peaceful from up here, belying the diplomatic tensions that had brought representatives from 17 worlds to this floating outpost. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice behind him was melodic, with an accent he couldn't quite place, slightly elongated vowels and a subtle resonance that seemed to linger in the air. Elijah turned to find himself face to face with one of the alien delegates. He recognized her immediately as the representative from Umbra, the mysterious shadow planet from the Proxima system. Her skin had a faint purple hue that seemed to shift subtly under the station's lights. Her eyes were large and luminous, with irises that reflected light like polished amethysts. "Dr. Mercer, isn't it?" she asked. "The astrobiologist who published the comparative xenophysiology paper last year?" He nodded, surprised. "I didn't realize my work had reached Umbra." "I make it a point to study the scientific minds of potential allies," she said, extending her hand. "Lyra Vosahara, diplomatic envoy of the Umbrian conclave." When their hands touched, Elijah felt an unusual warmth spread up his arm. Her skin was surprisingly soft, almost velvety, and he noticed the way she quickly withdrew from the bright overhead lights into the shadow of a support column. "The light," she explained, catching his observation. "Umbra orbits a dim red dwarf. Our evolution favored darkness over brightness." "That must make Earth visits challenging," Elijah said, gesturing toward the viewport where the sun was emerging from behind Earth's curved edge. Lyra's reaction was immediate. She stepped back with a small gasp, raising her hand to shield her face. The approaching sunlight created a prism effect through the station's specialized glass, sending a rainbow of colors across the observation deck. Without thinking, Elijah moved between her and the light. "Are you all right?" Her purple skin had paled to a lighter lavender. "Just a momentary discomfort. Our bodies process light differently." The station's warning system suddenly blared. "Attention all personnel. Unusual solar flare activity detected. Radiation shields engaging in 30 seconds. Please move to designated safety areas." Elijah saw panic flash across Lyra's features. "The shields won't fully protect against the specific radiation spectrum in this type of flare," he said, grabbing her arm. "Come with me." He led her through the station's corridors to his research lab, where specialized equipment created a field that would block the particular radiation wavelengths, dangerous to most known species. As the door sealed behind them, the lights dimmed automatically. "Thank you," Lyra said, visibly relaxing in the softer light. "How did you know?" "I've studied comparative physiology across species for years," Elijah explained, activating his equipment. "The Umbrian delegation's medical requirements were in the summit briefing. Your cellular structure is particularly sensitive to certain radiation bands." She smiled, a gesture that transformed her face. Most humans wouldn't bother to remember such details about another species. Most humans haven't dedicated their lives to understanding how different life forms evolved, he replied, watching as his monitors displayed the rising radiation levels outside. "We're safe in here." As they waited out the solar event, their conversation flowed from professional to personal. Lyra described the perpetual twilight of her homeworld, where twin moons provided most of the illumination for the surface. Elijah shared stories of Earth's diverse biomes. "Perhaps someday," Lyra said as the all-clear finally sounded, "you might see Umbra for yourself. Few humans have visited our world." "I'd like that," Elijah responded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing in the dim laboratory. Lyra reached out, her fingers almost touching his face before hesitating. "There's much about my people you would find fascinating, Dr. Mercer." "Elijah," he corrected gently. "Elijah," she repeated, his name sounding like a melody in her accent. "I believe our paths crossing today was more than chance. Some things are written in the stars long before we understand them." As she turned to leave, Elijah noticed something unusual. In the darkness of his lab, her skin seemed to absorb the scant light, creating subtle patterns like constellations across her purple skin. She caught him looking and smiled mysteriously. "Until tomorrow's sessions, then," she said, slipping out the door and leaving Elijah with the distinct feeling that his life had just irrevocably changed. "Odd things." Whispers in the twilight. 3 months after their first meeting, Elijah found himself aboard the Umbrian diplomatic vessel Penumbra, watching as Earth shrank to a pale blue dot against the black canvas of space. Lyra stood beside him, her hand occasionally brushing against his in a gesture that had become familiar during their time together on the station. "Nervous?" she asked, her purple skin glowing softly in the ship's dim lighting. "Excited?" Elijah corrected, though his racing heart suggested both emotions were present. "I've studied dozens of exoplanets, but setting foot on one is different." Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight in mesmerizing patterns. "Umbra will welcome you. Through me." During their journey, Elijah noticed subtle changes in Lyra. Away from Earth's harsh sunlight, she seemed more vibrant, more alive. Her movements became fluid and graceful, almost hypnotic. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, he caught glimpses of something otherworldly in her gestures, a quicksilver fluidity that didn't quite match human physiology. "We're approaching the Proxima system," she announced one sleep cycle, finding him in the ship's observation deck. "Come. You should see our arrival." The red dwarf star that Umbra orbited appeared first, a smoldering crimson eye in the darkness. Then the planet itself came into view, a world of deep purples and blues perpetually bathed in twilight, with wisps of luminescent clouds swirling in its atmosphere. "It's beautiful," Elijah whispered. "It's home," Lyra replied, a complex emotion in her voice. As she spoke, her fingers intertwined with his, and Elijah felt that strange warmth again, more intense now, as though her touch carried electric currents just beneath her skin. Their shuttle descended through swirling violet clouds to reveal landscapes unlike anything Elijah had ever seen. Forests of crystalline trees captured the dim starlight and refracted it downward in subtle cascades. Vast plains undulated with bioluminescent grasses that rippled like an ocean of living light. Cities rose organically from the terrain, their architecture resembling flowing liquid caught in mid-motion. The capital city, Nixholm, was built into the side of an enormous mountain range. Its structures spiraled upward, connected by bridges that seemed to be woven from solidified shadows. Elijah noticed immediately how the entire city was designed to avoid direct exposure to even the dim light of their red sun. "Our ancestors built their homes to honor the darkness," Lyra explained as their transport moved through the city. "Light is precious to us, sacred." Elijah noticed how the local Umbrians watched him. Their gazes were curious but wary, some openly hostile. Many whispered as he passed, their language a melodic series of sounds that the translation implant in his ear couldn't fully process. "They're saying you glow," Lyra translated, amusement in her voice. "Human skin reflects light differently than ours. To them you look as though you're constantly illuminated from within." At the diplomatic quarters, Elijah was given a suite adapted for human needs, though the lighting remained dimmer than Earth standard. That evening, Lyra invited him to a traditional Umbrian gathering to celebrate the twin moons' alignment, a rare event that occurred only once every 9 years. The celebration took place in an open amphitheater carved into a valley floor. As night deepened, both moons rose simultaneously, one silver, one with a bluish tinge, bathing the gathering in ethereal light. Elijah watched in fascination as the Umbrians responded to the moonlight, their movements becoming more animated, their voices more melodic. Lyra appeared beside him, wearing ceremonial attire, flowing fabrics that seemed to capture and release light with every movement. "Dance with me," she said, extending her hand. As they moved together under the twin moons, Elijah noticed her skin beginning to change, subtle patterns emerging like constellations across her purple flesh. Her eyes glowed more intensely, and when she laughed, there was an otherworldly resonance to the sound. "What's happening to you?" he asked softly. "Moonlight feeds us," she whispered, her lips close to his ear. "Not like your sun, which burns and scars. Our moons provide the perfect radiation, gentle, nourishing." She pressed closer against him. "Can you feel it? The way my body changes with the light?" He could. Her skin hummed with energy against his, creating sensations that traveled through his nervous system like nothing he'd experienced before. Later that night, as they walked along a crystalline pathway overlooking the valley, Lyra stopped suddenly. "There's something I must show you, Elijah. Something no human has seen before." "What is it?" She took both his hands in hers. "The truth of my people. But I need to know I can trust you completely." "You can." he said without hesitation. Her expression became serious. Some truths change everything, Elijah. Are you prepared for that? Before he could answer, voices called from behind them. A group of Umbrian officials approached, their faces rigid with formality. Ambassador Voshara, one addressed Lyra, the council requests your immediate presence. The official's gaze flickered dismissively over Elijah. Alone. Lyra's posture changed instantly, becoming regal, distant. Tomorrow, she whispered to Elijah before following the officials back toward the city center. That night, Elijah watched from his balcony as strange lights pulsed deep within the mountain beneath the city. Something was happening there, something secret, and whatever Lyra wanted to show him was connected to those rhythmic glows that looked disturbingly like a massive, beating heart. The celestial chamber for 3 days, Lyra was absent from diplomatic functions, leaving Elijah to navigate Umbrian customs alone. When she finally returned to him, her expression was troubled, her usual luminous quality dimmed. "Walk with me," she said, taking his hand with unusual urgency. "We need to leave the city tonight." "What's wrong?" he asked as they moved through the crystalline gardens that surrounded the diplomatic quarter. "The High Council is divided about your presence here," she explained, her voice low. "Some believe I've already shown you too much. Others fear what Earth might do if they knew the truth about us." "And what truth, Lyra?" Elijah stopped, turning her to face him. "You keep hinting at some great secret, but I don't understand." She glanced around to ensure they were alone. "Do you know why we call ourselves the Children of Shadow? Why we avoid direct starlight? Why our cities are built into mountains and caverns?" Before he could respond, she placed her palm against his chest. "Your species evolved to reflect light, to use it and then discard it. My people," her voice became a whisper, "we consume it." Elijah's scientific mind raced. "You mean photosynthesis? Your cells convert light to energy?" "No," she smiled sadly. "What we do is far more complete. We don't just convert light, we absorb it entirely. The radiation, the energy, even the photons themselves become part of us." She stepped closer. "That's why I was so drawn to you, Elijah. You radiate energy in a way that calls to my deepest nature." That night they slipped away from the capital, traveling in a small personal transport that glided silently above the crystalline landscape. They journeyed for hours until reaching a remote mountain range where ancient temples had been carved directly into the stone. "These are the first chambers," Lyra explained as they entered a narrow cave mouth, "where our ancestors first learned to channel the star energy." The tunnel descended steeply, illuminated only by Lyra's bioluminescent torch. As they went deeper, Elijah noticed veins of glowing material running through the rock walls, pulsing slightly like living circulatory systems. "Captured starlight," Lyra said, following his gaze. "Condensed and preserved in liquid form." The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast underground cavern. Elijah stopped, awestruck. Above them, the ceiling was a perfect replica of the night sky, but the stars moved and flowed like liquid, casting rippling patterns of light across the chamber floor. At the center was a pool of what appeared to be molten silver, pulsing with inner light. "This is the celestial chamber," Lyra said, her voice echoing. "The heart of Umbra, the source of our life." She led him to the edge of the pool. "What you're about to see, Elijah, it will change how you see me forever. Are you certain you want this?" He looked at her, this woman from another world who had captured his heart with her mystery, her beauty, her otherness. "I want to know you, Lyra. All of you." She nodded solemnly and began to remove the outer layers of her clothing. Standing at the pool's edge in a simple shift, she looked both vulnerable and powerful. "We feed rarely but deeply. The process sustains us for months. I haven't fed properly since before coming to Earth." With that, she stepped into the pool. The liquid light embraced her, swirling around her body like a living thing. Elijah watched, transfixed, as her purple skin began to transform, becoming translucent, revealing a network of luminous pathways beneath. Her eyes glowed with increasing intensity until they were pure light. Then came the transformation that truly took his breath away. From her back, extensions unfurled, not solid like wings, but formed of shadow and light intertwined, stretching outward in patterns that defied physical laws. Her body hovered above the pool, suspended in the liquid starlight as it flowed into her, through her, becoming part of her cellular structure. Elijah understood now. The Umbrians didn't just use light, they were symbiotic with it, existing in a state between energy and matter. What humans might see as vampiric, the consumption of light, was actually a sacred communion with the fundamental forces of the universe. When Lyra emerged from the pool, she was transformed. Her purple skin now held galaxies within it, swirling patterns of stars and nebulae that shifted and moved across her form. Her eyes contained the depth of space itself. She was terrifying and magnificent. "Now you see me," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that vibrated in his chest. "What I truly am." For a moment, Elijah couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the beauty and alienness before him. Then, drawing on courage he didn't know he possessed, he stepped forward and reached for her hand. "I see you," he said softly, "and you're the most beautiful thing I've ever known." The luminous patterns on her skin rippled at his touch. She looked down at their joined hands with wonder. "You aren't afraid?" "No," he said. "Different doesn't mean frightening. It just means there's more to discover." She moved closer, the starlight still pulsing beneath her skin. In all our history, no human has witnessed the feeding and responded with acceptance rather than fear. "Maybe that's because no human has ever loved an Umbrian before," Elijah said, the words escaping before he could consider their weight. Lyra's eyes widened, the galaxies within them expanding. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers leaving trails of gentle light across his skin. "Love between our kinds has been forbidden since the first contact. Our biologies are too different, our needs too opposed. And yet here we are," Elijah said. When she kissed him, Elijah felt as though he was touching a star. Warmth and energy flowed between them, creating sensations that transcended physical boundaries. Her transformed body shared with him glimpses of cosmic consciousness, flashes of perception beyond human understanding. As they held each other in the glow of the celestial chamber, neither noticed the silent figure watching from the shadows, an Umbrian elder whose eyes reflected not wonder at their union, but cold determination to prevent what he saw as contamination of their sacred ways. "The human knows too much," he whispered to himself. "The council must be informed immediately." Blood of Stars dawn never truly came on Umbra, but the subtle shift in the quality of darkness signaled morning as Elijah and Lyra emerged from the ancient temple complex. The residual energy of the celestial chamber still hummed between them, creating an almost visible connection wherever their skin touched. "You should be exhausted," Lyra remarked, watching him with wonder. "Most beings cannot endure proximity to an Umbrian in their transformed state." Elijah flexed his fingers, noting the faint luminescent trails that appeared when he moved quickly, an after effect of their intimate contact. "I feel more alive than I ever have," he admitted. "Like every cell in my body has been awakened." Lyra's expression shifted to concern. "This is unprecedented. The energy transfer shouldn't have affected you this way." She placed her palm against his chest, her eyes widening. "Your cellular structure is adapting, Elijah. Somehow you're integrating the cosmic radiation instead of being harmed by it." Before they could discuss the implications, the quiet morning was shattered by the arrival of 3 sleek Umbrian vessels that descended from the purple sky, surrounding them in a triangle formation. The lead craft's door slid open to reveal Malik Vostar, the High Chancellor of the Umbrian Conclave, and Lyra's uncle. "Niece," he acknowledged coldly, his gaze fixed accusingly on Elijah. "You have violated our most sacred law. The human must be contained and his memories purged." Lyra stepped protectively in front of Elijah. "He understands, Uncle. He accepts our nature." "Acceptance is irrelevant," Malik replied. "The Council has ruled unanimously. Earth cannot know of our dependency on cosmic energy. Their scientists would weaponize such knowledge against us." Elijah stepped forward. "With respect, Chancellor, I'm a scientist myself. I see no weapon here, only a beautiful evolutionary adaptation. Our worlds could benefit from shared knowledge." Malik's purple skin darkened with anger. "You speak of what you cannot comprehend, human. Our feeding process in its entirety would terrify your kind. The Council's judgment stands." Guards emerged from the vessels, moving to surround them. Lyra's body tensed, subtle patterns of light beginning to ripple beneath her skin, a warning sign Elijah now recognized as her body preparing to defend itself. "I won't let you take him," she said, her voice carrying that otherworldly resonance that emerged when her emotions intensified. Malik looked genuinely pained. You leave me no choice, Lyra. He gestured to the guards. Take them both. The human for memory purging, Ambassador Vosahara for rehabilitation. What happened next occurred with such speed that Elijah could barely track the movements. Lyra's body exploded with light, her transformed state emerging without the ritual of the pool. Her shadow-light wings unfurled, creating a protective shield around them both. The nearest guards were thrown backward by the pulse of energy that radiated from her. "Run!" she commanded, grabbing Elijah's hand. They fled into the crystalline forest as chaos erupted behind them. The trees around them responded to Lyra's energy, bending and shifting to create barriers against their pursuers. Elijah felt his own body responding strangely, his muscles working with unexpected efficiency, his senses heightened beyond normal human capacity. "What's happening to me?" He gasped as they paused briefly in a grove of vibrating crystal formations. Lyra examined him with concern and fascination. "The communion in the chamber changed you. You're carrying traces of star energy in your cells." Her expression became troubled. "This has never happened before. No human physiology should be able to integrate our energy." A distant humming signaled approaching vessels. Lyra pulled him deeper into the forest, eventually reaching a hidden grotto where a small personal transport lay concealed beneath a canopy of luminescent vines. "We need to reach the shadow ports," she explained as they boarded. "From there we might find passage off-world." As they sped across Umbra's twilight landscape, Elijah processed everything that had happened. "Your uncle mentioned the feeding process in its entirety. What didn't you show me, Lyra?" She kept her eyes on the navigation controls. "What you witnessed was our communion with starlight, pure energy. But in times of desperation, my people can also draw life energy from living beings." She glanced at him, her eyes reflecting uncertainty. "The process doesn't harm evolved sentient species. We take only excess energy, leaving the essence intact. But to primitive observers throughout galactic history, it appeared as though we were consuming souls." "Vampire legends," Elijah murmured, understanding dawning. "They exist on countless worlds because your people visited them." She nodded. "We were researchers once, explorers, until fear and superstition drove us into isolation." Their conversation was interrupted as their vessel rocked violently. A larger Umbrian ship had locked onto them with a traction beam. Lyra's hands flew across the controls, but the small craft couldn't break free. "I'm sorry, Elijah," she whispered as their transport was drawn inexorably upward. Instead of Malik's guards, however, they were greeted by faces Lyra clearly recognized with surprise. "Soren, Kira? What are you doing?" A tall Umbrian male with unusually pale lavender skin stepped forward. "Rescuing you, obviously. The Stellar Communion doesn't agree with the Council's decision. The Resistance," Lyra explained to Elijah. "They've advocated for open relations with other species for generations." Kira, a fierce-looking female with intricate markings across her purple skin, was studying Elijah with open curiosity. "He's carrying star energy," she observed. "How is that possible?" "We don't know," Lyra admitted. "It happened after our communion in the celestial chamber." Soren's expression became grave. "Then you've given the hardliners exactly what they feared most. Proof that humans could potentially harness our power." "Or," Kira suggested, "proof that our species are more compatible than we've been led to believe." As they spoke, the ship accelerated away from the capital, heading toward Umbra's smallest moon. Elijah learned that the Resistance had maintained a secret base there for decades, working to preserve ancient knowledge from before the isolation. "The Council has been keeping secrets," Soren told them as they approached the lunar base. "Historical records that suggest humans and Umbrians once lived together in harmony. Evidence that our biologies are complementary, not opposed." "If that's true," Elijah asked, "what changed?" "War," Kira answered grimly. "A terrible conflict 5,000 years ago that both our peoples have chosen to forget rather than reconcile." As their ship docked at the hidden lunar facility, alarms suddenly blared. "We've been tracked," Soren announced, checking the security feeds. "Multiple Council vessels approaching. And they're not alone." On the monitors, Elijah was shocked to see an Earth Alliance cruiser moving alongside the Umbrian ships. "That's impossible. Earth doesn't have ships in the system." Lyra's expression darkened. "My uncle would have contacted your government, claiming I kidnapped you. It's a pretext. Now he can justify memory purging as a rescue operation." We need to leave this system, Kira decided. There's an old research station at the edge of the Proxima Nebula. We can hide there while we decide our next move. As they prepared to flee once more, Elijah found a moment alone with Lyra. The star energy in his system had continued to grow, creating visible patterns beneath his skin that mirrored her own. When they touched, energy flowed between them like a completed circuit. No matter what happens, he told her, I don't regret knowing the truth about you, about us. Lyra's eyes shimmered with emotion. In all my years among the stars, I never expected to find my complement in a human scientist. Maybe that's exactly why it happened, he suggested. Because both of us were looking beyond the surface, seeking understanding instead of fear. Their moment was interrupted as the first explosions rocked the lunar base. The hunt had begun. Beyond the event horizon, the research station at the edge of the Proxima Nebula had been abandoned for over a century, a relic from an earlier age of Umbrian scientific exploration. Its systems were archaic but functional, powered by collectors that drew energy from the nebula's radiation. For 3 weeks, their small band of fugitives had evaded both Earth and Umbrian authorities. The strange transformation in Elijah's body had continued, accelerating with each passing day. He could now perceive wavelengths of light invisible to normal human vision, and had developed the ability to absorb and redirect small amounts of energy, a pale echo of Lyra's abilities, but unprecedented for a human. Your genetic structure is adapting, Soren explained after examining him in the station's medical bay. It's as though dormant sections of human DNA are being activated by exposure to star energy. Or perhaps, Kira suggested, watching them with her scientist's eye, humans and Umbrians share more ancient history than either species remembers. They had discovered historical archives in the station's database, records deliberately erased from Umbra's main repositories. The document spoke of a time when humans and Umbrians had not merely coexisted, but had formed a symbiotic relationship. Umbrians provided protection from harmful radiation and energy manipulation, while humans, with their unique biology, could safely traverse environments toxic to Umbrians. Our peoples were partners, Lyra said wonderingly as they reviewed the ancient texts, until the Great Sundering. The records were fragmented, but they gathered that a terrible misunderstanding had led to conflict. Humans coming to fear the Umbrians' feeding process. Umbrians retreating from what they perceived as human betrayal. Both civilizations had chosen to forget rather than heal, encoding warnings about each other into their deepest cultural myths. On their 23rd day at the station, the detection systems gave the alarm they had been dreading. A joint Earth-Umbrian task force had located them. They're approaching from both vectors, Soren reported grimly. No escape route. Elijah stood at the observation window watching the approaching ships. Behind them loomed a sight he had only seen in astronomical images. The accretion disk of a dormant black hole. Its gravitational pull just strong enough to bend light around it, without actively consuming nearby matter. The event horizon, he murmured, an idea forming. Lyra, could your people navigate near a black hole? She joined him at the window. Theoretically, our ability to manipulate energy gives us some protection against gravitational forces. But even for us, crossing the event horizon would be fatal. Not crossing, Elijah clarified. Skimming, using the gravitational lensing effect to hide the station. Kira approached, understanding dawning. The ergosphere, the region where space itself is dragged by the black hole's rotation. Objects there can actually gain energy from the black hole's spin. It's too dangerous, Soren objected. No ship has successfully navigated the ergosphere of a black hole. No conventional ship, Lyra said, her eyes meeting Elijah's with growing excitement. But what if we weren't using conventional propulsion? What if we used our combined ability to manipulate energy directly? The plan took shape quickly. The approaching ships were less than an hour away when they initiated the station's long dormant engines, pushing it gently toward the black hole's influence. As they approached the outer boundaries of its gravitational field, conventional systems began to fail. This is where we take over, Lyra said, reaching for Elijah's hand. They stood together in the station's central chamber, surrounded by the remaining resistance members. As Lyra began the transformation process, Elijah felt his own body responding in kind, the star energy within him expanding, responding to her call. Their energies merged. creating a field around the station that interacted with the black hole's gravitational pull in ways that defied standard physics. The station shuddered as it entered the ergosphere. Outside the viewports, reality itself seemed to bend, light curving in impossible arcs, time dilating in visible waves. Soren and Kira worked frantically at the controls, using the energy field Lyra and Elijah generated to steer their impossible course. "The pursuing ships have lost us," Kira reported. "The gravitational lensing is bending light around us, rendering us effectively invisible." What none of them had anticipated was how the black hole's energy would interact with the communion between Elijah and Lyra. As the station reached the point of maximum gravitational stress, their merged energies began to expand exponentially, creating a phenomenon never before recorded. "Something's happening," Soren shouted over the groaning of the station structure. "The space around us is changing." Elijah could feel it through his connection with Lyra. They weren't merely navigating the ergosphere. They were reshaping it. Their combined energy, amplified by the black hole, was creating a bubble of altered spacetime, a domain where the fundamental forces operated according to new rules. "We're not just hiding," Lyra realized, her voice filled with awe. "We're creating." As the bubble stabilized around them, the violent shaking subsided. Outside the viewports, they beheld a sight none of them could have imagined, a realm of swirling energy patterns, neither fully in normal space nor completely within the black hole's domain. "A borderland between states of existence. The threshold," Kira whispered, giving name to what they were witnessing. "A space between spaces." Days turned to weeks as they explored their new domain. They discovered they could observe normal space without being detected, and eventually learned to create temporary gateways back to the conventional universe. Through these windows, they witnessed the aftermath of their disappearance. The Earth-Umbrian task force had concluded they had been destroyed in the black hole's pull. But something unexpected had resulted from the joint mission: dialogue. For the first time in millennia, humans and Umbrians were communicating directly, sharing their confusion over what they had witnessed during the pursuit. "They're talking about energy patterns they both recorded," Soren reported after one observation. "Patterns that contradicted both species' understanding of physics. They've established a joint scientific commission to investigate." "Understanding begins with questions," Lyra said, smiling at Elijah. "Questions lead to curiosity instead of fear." 6 months after their escape, they made a decision. Using their now refined ability to create gateways, they sent the historical archives they had discovered back to both Earth and Umbra, anonymous packages of knowledge that contained proof of the ancient partnership between their peoples. "Will it be enough?" Elijah asked as they watched their message pod slip through the gateway into normal space. "Not immediately," Lyra acknowledged, her hand finding his. "But it's a beginning." In the strange twilight of their threshold domain, Elijah and Lyra had discovered that their physiologies continued to adapt and merge. The star energy they shared had transformed them both into something neither fully human nor completely Umbrian. Beings of light and shadow intertwined, able to exist in states between matter and energy. Around them, a small community had formed. Other dissidents and seekers who had found their way to the threshold through the gateways. Together they were building something new, a civilization that honored both their origins while embracing their unique evolution. "Do you ever regret it?" Elijah asked Lyra one cycle as they stood at the boundary of their domain, watching the distant stars through the lens of warped spacetime. "Giving up your world for this uncertainty?" Lyra's transformed body shimmered with constellations as she turned to him. "How can I regret finding truth? Before you, I was bound by limitations I never questioned. Now we create our own possibilities." She gestured toward the heart of their new settlement, where Umbrians and the few humans who had joined them worked together, their differences becoming strengths in complementary harmony. "Besides," she added with a smile that still captivated him, "we haven't given up our worlds. We're building a bridge between them step by step." Elijah pulled her close, feeling the now familiar flow of energy between them. The communion that had once been sacred ritual transformed into constant connection. "Star-crossed lovers," he murmured, remembering an old Earth phrase, "except we rewrote the stars." As they kissed, their forms briefly merged into pure light before resolving again, a manifestation of the profound bond they shared. Around them, The threshold domain pulsed in response, its boundaries expanding slightly to accommodate the energy of their emotion. Beyond the event horizon, beyond the limitations of their separate biologies, they had found a truth greater than either of their civilizations had dared to remember. That differences could be pathways rather than barriers, that love could transform fear into wonder, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries waited in the spaces between what was known and what was possible. In time, their threshold domain would grow from sanctuary to embassy, a neutral ground where humans and Umbrians could rediscover their shared history and forge a new future together. But for now it remained their secret, a luminous void where two beings from worlds apart had proven that even the most fundamental forces in the universe could be transcended by understanding and love. Throughout the galaxy, travelers would occasionally report strange sightings, glimpses of impossible beings dancing in the light of dying stars or skimming the edges of black holes. Scientists dismissed these as hallucinations caused by cosmic radiation, but those with more open minds whispered other possibilities. Legends of the Lightwalkers, the Threshold Guardians, beings who had found the courage to step beyond the boundaries of what their worlds believed possible, and in doing so had begun to heal ancient wounds between stars.